Hello and welcome. My name is Kent Rohr. I'm the sales engineer for Maxmatech. In this video, we're covering the maxAI 430 PC tool. On Configure Display, setting up one screen, getting the inputs, gauge sources, warning lights, output, all set up and then flashed. First, let's check the version. The tool that we're using is build version 2312. The cluster I have is firmware 2006. Bootloader is 1000. I've connected to the maxAI 430. I've got the IV connected, as you can see here. I'm not doing anything with the settings. I'm not messing with anything with the custom parameters on the CAN network. We're just going to deal with mainly setting up the inputs with the display, warning lights, LCD, LED, thresholds, output, and then flashing. So after you've set up your settings, your custom parameters, if you want something specific, and you set up your splash screen and your icons, you're going to jump into screen 1. I've got engine coolant, def level, fuel 1, trans oil 1, and engine oil 1 all set up as a digital readout. I had this display enabled, so this page will be enabled when it's flashed. I turned off configuration screen timeout. That's if you're configuring the screen on the actual menu of the device, having a timeout. So I turned that off. I have the auto switch theme by light sensor, meaning that the light sensor will be changing the theme of the brightness and color coordination of the screen depending on if you're in low light or bright conditions. The transmission position display is down here showing drive. I turned off loss of communication. Since I don't have this connected to a active CAN network, I do not want a pop-up on my actual device stating lost communication. So I turn that off just for demo purposes. And I have a pop-up banner enabled, meaning you'll get a pop-up banner of a fault code that's active, that's recognized, which you can then clear or hide. Once you have what you want set up in all these 5 different parameters set up here. So remember, engine coolant, def level, fuel 1, trans oil, and engine oil 1. I'm going to jump up to screen 2, and I'm going to make sure that's not enabled. Make sure all these are not enabled. We're just doing one screen for now. Then I go to inputs. Now here, I've already added these, but what you would do is you click on the add button and it would throw in another block here that would assign a number for the exact pin on the back of the unit that it's going to be utilizing. I have 6 total inputs selected. Number 1 and 2 are resistance inputs, 3 is voltage, 4 is frequency, 5 is a digital, high, and 6 is current. And you'll see when you set up these and you start hitting add, you'll start adding those pin numbers here on the left. When you have those added, you'll look at these ranges here from 0% to 100%. And this range here is for resistance 0 to 5 ohm and slope. You've got voltage at 0 to 32 VDC on a slope curve. You've got frequency at 0 to 20,000 hertz. Current, you have a range of 4 to 20 milliamp on a slope curve. So here, if you have a different kind of sender or you need to kind of modify this to kind of fit the reading that you want to show on the display versus the sender that's pushing into this, you can modify this curve to show how accurate you want that sender to be perceived on the UI of the device. On this digital, you have a choice of just high or low. Next, I'm going to go to gauge sources. Here, it's taking the source of the data for each of these signals. This is where you can decide, do I want it to be a CAN signal or one of the inputs that we selected. So you can see here, I did fuel 1 is input 2, def level input 3, engine oil 1 is input 6, nothing for the ammeter, and of course I can add in some more of the inputs here. I'll leave those blank for now. So we've got currently 3 different inputs pulling in signal. The low and high limit is the range, and then it shows the percentages or the Fahrenheit, PSI, and so forth on the right. So remember, this is taking the information of how the gauge is showing that from a source, and the source could be CAN or one of your inputs. You jump over to warning lights. Now you have LED and LCD. LED is what would be wrapped around the I or IV version of the 430. So those are the hard-coded warning lights on the outside bezel. The LCD is a page, which I'll go to Configure Display Icons, this page here that you can apply, so you can have a digital look of the warning lights on a separate page. So looking at the LEDs, which are hard-coded on the outside bezel, I've got a few selected here. Input 5, low fuel. Input 1, trans oil pressure. Input 2 on set 20 here is engine coolant level. Now looking at these, you'll see the threshold's already set for all the CAN because those are already built into the standard stack. And of course, you can change that in your settings custom parameter section for your CAN. When we look at the inputs, trans oil pressure, I have it at 20 to 80%. And I have it enabled with the logic here. Now this logic can be turned backwards or forwards, okay? Now, since I have it this way at 20 to 80, this is telling me the threshold of when it's going to trigger a warning light alarm message, basically showing you that it's hit the threshold that you want a warning for. So the logic function will always determine how the threshold values will function on your display. If you have a logic high, which is how this picture is showed right here, then that means that the LCD warning light will turn on when the value reaches the high threshold. So on 80, it will turn on while ascending. Now the LCD warning light will not turn off until it reaches the low threshold while descending. So it's on when it descends and it hits that 20, then it can turn off. Now you could turn that around. This would be called logic low. And logic low would just mean that the LCD warning light will turn on when the value reaches the low threshold while descending. And then the warning light will not turn off until it reaches the high number here, high threshold, while it's ascending. Okay, so I'm going to turn this back around. So this will be a logic high setup here. Remember, this is how you're setting up your warnings of hitting a threshold. Now output, we only have a digital. I did a high side, DM1 amber warning light. Let me go back to warning lights and just show you the LCD portion that you could set up in your configure display. Here, I do have one set up here, input 4 at 10 to 15%. This has a low logic, meaning the warning light will turn on when the value reaches the low threshold. And it's not going to turn off until it ascends and hits the high threshold. I have it off, but I can turn it on here, meaning I want this to actually function. We showed the output. Now we go to cluster configuration. And this is where you can read your current configuration on the device, or you can write the configuration that you just did in this whole setup. You can open up a configuration file you've already saved. It's a .srec file, or you can save the current configuration file that you have. And this is opening up firmware if you're flashing a firmware upgrade, or if you're flashing the splash screen. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and write the configuration that I just created by hitting the write button. My maxAI 430 IV is connected via USB to my computer and powered on through the wall power outlet. I'm going to hit the write. My display says configuring device, please wait. You'll see the writing up above. It'll only take about 10 seconds. It says write complete, please cycle ignition switch. So in here, I'm just going to unplug the display, and then I'm going to plug it back in. I then hit OK. My maxAI starts up. And when it starts up, it showed this image here. This is the startup screen after the bootloader or splash screen. And so here you're seeing that there was an active fault. We have a transmission pressure warning on the LED hard-coded side of the bezel. Now what that means is, let's look back at our configuration. We're going to go to warning lights. Our LED has been triggered. And you'll see I only have one enabled here with the inputs. These other ones are off. This one's enabled. And since it has not had a chance to actually hit a off threshold or on threshold, it's basically outside these parameters, it's been triggered. And so it's showing that red light that you're seeing here in the picture. Now the LCD itself, I had that off. But if I had this on, then I could also see on the LCD a pop-up that would show the transmission pressure as a warning. And then I could go view that warning or clear it. So again, this has been triggered. There are no active warnings. I made a selection here, that's why you see this circle. There is no current drive position here. We have done no mileage. And here's the current date of the video. The engine oil, degrees Fahrenheit, this is just a number that has not been populated yet, which you can of course change in your configuration. So all these are not connected to actual inputs at this time. So that concludes this video of the maxAI 430 PC tool, setting up a display icon, warning light LED for the LCD, screen 1 with the all inputs, gauge sources, outputs, all set up to then do a flash. Thank you for joining. I'll see you in your next video for more PC tool discussions, SDK discussions on the maxAI, and other tools we use for Maxima Text products. Thank you.